Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to what is now episode 9 of COVID Cast JA, presented to you by the private sector organization of Jamaica. Today, we are going to have a very lively discussion because today we're going to be talking about leading your company through uncertain times. And what more uncertain times are we facing, Nevada Paul? I'm joined by Nevada Paul, who is the lead architect of the PSOJ SME project. And today, we have, as a part of our panel, Stephen Price, who is country manager for Flow Jamaica, as well as Lisa Lake, Group CEO of Restaurant Associates Limited. We are really going to have a great discussion. We have leaders of two very large organizations who are going to be talking us through their process, their contingency planning, and what it has been like leading through this crisis. And as they are looking to come out of the crisis, what are the plans? So Nevada, we've been using this Latin word, interregnum.
Yes, absolutely.
Which describes a period in between when old ways are dying and the new cannot yet be born. So for those of you who received our memo for this week, for those of you who have not received our memo, let me just remind you, email us at sme@psoj.org or leave your email in the comment section, because we want to be able to weekly email our memo that goes through the various topics that we're discussing. So Nevada, let's just jump straight into it. What a time of uncertainty and a time of crisis, but yet this time has also been described as a time of opportunity. And this is a time where the real leaders will rise, because true leadership is a factor of how you lead during crisis. So this whole interregnum and this concept of an interregnum, let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, fantastic. So basically it's an old Latin word, old Italian word that meant between the realm of one king and another. So what happens between one king and another is, for a long time how one king would reign. And then that king dies and his son or his nephew rises, or niece rises, and you're not quite sure. Will you still be in favor? Will you not be in favor? What are they going to do, the principles, and so on? So it becomes a very scary time for any people in a society, which is literally, you have a set of old ways that are going to go, and some new ways are not yet formed. This is a classic situation that we're in now. Make no mistake, we are in a very unique time in business history. In fact, in all history. There is going to be mention of this time pre-COVID, post-COVID. It is the kind of thing that is going to cause a societal disconnect and evolution. Yes. And yet, we don't quite know what the new realm will look like, what the new configuration will look like.
So for leaders during this time, what are some of the issues that leaders have to be grappling with in this interregnum?
Yes. So one of the first things is to try and understand what is going to be the shape of the recovery. Now, the Economists and Epoch actually did a summary of this a few weeks ago on their site, gave this notion that there are possibly 4 ways in which the economy could recover. So there is what they call the V shape, dramatic drop down, and then rapid rise up, right? And that would be obviously a very good situation, and many things could factor in whether we get that. There's a U-shaped version, which is a slow descent into recession and then a slow rise out. Could be because we find a vaccine, could be because we find new ways of doing business relatively quickly and we shift the economy. There is also the possibility of an L shape. L means you head to the bottom and you actually stay there for a while because perhaps you lack the leadership to get out of the situation, or the ways forward remain unclear. Now, happiest if you had a J shape, which we have a slight decline and then a rapid rise up. But that would mean that we were investing very quickly in new ways of existing, new ways of running an economy. When you take an industry, for example, like tourism or like remittances, let's say, the basic notion of tourism and remittances is likely to be L-shaped. Because if you think about that, remittances, for example, require that Jamaicans abroad are doing well. So you send money back to Jamaica. We know that with the job loss and all of what's going on in Europe and America, England for us, Canada and America, Jamaicans are going to take a while to do well again, to be able to start sending the money home. So it may take a while for our remittance business, which is a hugely critical business in Jamaica, to come around. So in that situation, what you're requiring the best and the brightest in our country to do is how can we pivot the economy? What can we think about offering now in a new way, in different ways? How do we think about investing in infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, and all kinds of things that suddenly Jamaica economy reconfigures? Because an economy that is dependent on remittances and dependent on people arriving on aeroplanes is not immediately going to be one that's going to come back. So we are going to have to aggressively pivot the economy. And certainly if you're in one of those industries, it's going to be critical for you to figure out how you're going to survive.
So for those who are just joining us, today we are talking about leading your company through uncertain times. And Nevada Paul, who is the lead architect of the PSOJ SME project, he actually just went through us the different shapes of the recovery that an economy can go through: the U shape, the V shape, the L shape, and the J shape. For further information on this, please email us at sme@psoj.org. And for those of you who have been watching the program so far and you're saying to yourself, Mr. Paul, that sounds like some high-level economics there. What does this mean for my business as a leader, and what should I be doing now bearing these recovery shapes in mind?
Okay, so the first thing you need to start thinking about is what I call scenario planning. Now, we know very often, right, when you most businesses, you think about your 3-year plan, your 5-year plan, and then you're operationalizing.
Yes.
In the interregnum, where the ground is shifting, it's actually ridiculous for you to spend too much time thinking about your 3-year and 5-year plan, because strategy and operation are happening now. They're happening live. And therefore, once you recognize that this dramatic change is coming, so remove the denial that you're like, oh, we're going back. We're not going back. Let that go. Look forward with baby steps and have what we call contingency planning. If we are L-shaped in the economy, so we're staying down, what do you do? If it's coming back faster, what do you do? How you do position yourself? And you're always thinking in quarters, meaning, what am I going to do for 3 months? And then watch, what am I going to do for the next 3 months? So what has to be clear in your mind is what I call contingency planning, and being aware that what steps you'll take depending on what happens outside. Now, in that situation, you also have to be reasonable about knowing what you control and what you don't control.
Exactly.
Right. Because, for example, you could sanitize every nook and cranny of your hotel.
Exactly.
But the tourists get on a plane. That part you don't control. And a lot of things are outside your control. So you can watch for that, but recognize if it's not happening, what's your other plan?
Yes.
Then the other thing to be thinking about is what I call reconnect to your core values. When times are scary, are you feeling small, even as a leader? Sometimes you end up cutting corners that you regret doing on your core side. So one of the things we always say, take some time to reconnect to your core values so you don't end up losing your way. Right? So as you reflect out, this is also an inner journey about who you are and how your personal values are going to manifest in the business decisions that you take. So when you think very clearly about what lines won't I cross? What are going to be my acts of kindness to others in this time? When I think about words like courage, compassion, self-discipline, commitment, community, what do these words mean to me? And how am I going to manifest them in the business over the next 3 months, 6 months, etc.? And then what kind of stories will you tell about how you manage your business at this time? And how will important constituencies like workers, customers, suppliers, what stories will they tell about you and how they were treated in this period? Right? So all of that core values is true.
Thinking. It's not just looking at a balance sheet. It is a time of considering a leader's value. So a lot of these things that we've been talking about in leadership, all of these things are now manifesting because it is a balance of the economy, of looking at what's happening around you and making those decisions, but also looking within and the values of the organization. But Nevada, as you're doing this as a leader, what are some of the signs that should be driving your business decisions when you put all of this together?
Yes. Well, certainly what I said is you keep a watch out. For example, remember you're feeling a little weak, but so is your competitor. So the question is there an opportunity in this environment to sort of seize and change the competitive dynamic? For example, maybe there was a particular person who was working at a competitor that you've had your eye on for a long time. This may be a good time to try and hire somebody who you've actually wanted to bring into your organization. Maybe it's a great salesperson, a great technology person, someone, because remember, they also are feeling a little nervous in their own situation. So this may be a good time to capture that. Maybe there's a client relationship that your competitor has that you're interested in also acquiring. Take advantage of their supply disruption. The fact that their customer may be nervous and not feeling sure. That may be something to improve your own competitive position in this time. So don't only be looking inward, but also look outward. Okay. And as I said, remember the issue of people, 3 people, right? The workers. Is their job secure? Is it not secure? Under what conditions is it secure? Again, it's what about the contingency planning, right? We can hold the team together if A, B, C. We can't hold the team if this happens. Have an open discussion so they know what's coming. You also may require them to do different things. What was good performance before may not be good performance now. They may have to step up their game. Just be clear with that. Again, we are going through a very tight and scary time. And therefore, we're going to require different types of performance. For example, you know, there are people who you have on a team who they're sitting on projects forever, 20 projects, but nothing is ever done, right? That whole thing about not getting things done, that is low performance now that you could have gotten away with a more stable time. So for example, lean on those people who get stuff done, who move forward and take stuff across the finish line, right? Dependability and attitude are now at a premium. Similarly, customers, let them know, will you be getting the same products and services that they've come to depend on? I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of Jamaicans not getting the service and products that they are used to. In fact, some of the companies that we'll be talking to today maybe have Jamaicans interested in what's happening with the level of service and so on. So all of that part of the dynamic of going through difficult time because your company also may be under siege. And you've got to remain calm, collected, and clear while moving forward and dealing with both the fires in the near term, in the very near term, and watching for the little bit further out near term. We've talked about before the issue of cash management. Critical, right? The cash management is your war chest. So watch carefully how you manage cash inflows and outflows, and make sure that you're managing that in such a way that if the recovery is more prolonged than you had hoped, you're trying to keep a solid position. And of course, one of our big shows was around pivoting. And the pivoting is actually critical, again, because if you don't see the return, if your industry is in L, then you have got to pivot in a way to get out or fold. Remember, in this time also, what that Kenny Rogers song said, know when to hold, know when to fold. In this time also, watch for the signal that says, this is not my inning. But also remember, right? That resurrection, renaissance is also in the cards. So it may not be the same configuration, but it's okay to say, all right, given these factors, let me not keep chasing that which I cannot see. And there is honor in a recognition that I will come back again to fight another day in a different consideration. Then we also want to talk about personal, mental agility and attitude, fortitude. Things like nutrition, sleep, exercise, keeping your personal relationships. No matter
So
yaga, 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 yaga.
let's hold a
Yeah.
second for our viewers, because our viewers, I'm seeing people are saying some very good information, interesting points. And for those who are just joining us, we are talking about leading your company through uncertain times. And Nevada is just going through right now this whole concept of mental agility and fortitude. We talked about actually managing the business, your cash management. We talk about your people, your customers, your suppliers, and your workers, who are the core of who will get you up and running. Dependability, attitude, very important in the workforce at this time. And we've also talked about what we spoke about in previous shows, the whole art of pivoting. So please, you can go back to our previous shows to look at what we've said about pivoting. But Nevada, you're now bringing up this whole concept of mental agility and fortitude and nutrition and exercise. And the leaders are saying to them, say, what do you mean I must sleep now and exercise?
Yes, absolutely. Why? Yes, because it's like the warrior, it's the armor, right? That armor of survival. To keep mentally fit, you also have to let a lot of worries go, right? So when it is, and what tends to happen in a high stress time, you go home now, and the husband or the wife, them a body, you get more stress. Or the picnic, them a yell, and you get more stress. You've got to let all of that go and let it be that you find your zen, your quiet space, whether it's listening to music or just reading a magazine. Actually, don't do the Netflix thing. Those things are, I mean, I'm not saying can't watch Netflix, but those are not calming things, right? So what you need to do is to just that quiet time, that personal time, and making sure, you know, we're getting your exercise, you're getting your breathing, that whole idea of the pause and the breath, a small walk, right? Does the body good? If you're a gardener, these are things that are fantastic. But connect to your still space, connect to your spiritual space, and that allows you to reinvigorate when you go back into work. But it's this notion of there was a very famous show back in the 70s, and we were those of you of a certain age, right? Called Kung Fu. It's the Kung Fu Master. You remember that? David Carradine, right? This is answer this time. I want everybody to recognize that in the middle of this interregnum, you'll notice that everything has slowed down. Everything. The mental mode is what I call the Kung Fu Master. What they used to do in that show in the 70s, when he started to do the karate, they would slow the tape. Yeah. So you saw him kind of moving in a kind of thing because he extending the minutes by being deliberate. Don't rush into things that you're going to later regret. There is no hurry at this time, right? Keep a watchful eye and a positive disposition. Laugh a lot, even at your own worries, because that is also regenerative, right? So is what? You'll figure out another way. And whenever, by the way, you can configure yourself, I always tell people this, whatever level you're living at now, if you can just imagine yourself several levels down, you actually will survive, because it means that you are comfortable building back again. So if you guys still go work at McDonald's or still go work at Ting and know that you'll be fine, then you have you gives you a lot of latitude to make very comfortable decisions. Is when you kind of hold on to current position that causes you mental stress and high, right? Get the input you need, and then max out your flex path, your contingency plan. But be deliberate. At a minimum, possibly set a course for survival, and then lay the foundations for further success. These is the words of the week. So this week at the PSOJ, we're talking about the interregnum and the Kung Fu Master who manages in the midst of this uncertainty.
So we're gathering the team to begin anew. We have to be deliberate. We have to set a course for survival and lay the foundations for future success. So what Nevada Poe has done for us, and Nevada Poe is a Jamaican who went overseas, worked as an international financial consultant. He's actually Harvard educated and has worked with several businesses through various forms of their success, has helped businesses to grow and to rejuvenate. So much of what he's saying is from experience. And what he's told us about today is the entire balance of leading through these uncertain times. So there's the balance sheet. there's the hardcore economy that you need to be looking at and what you need to be paying attention to in the external environment. You need to maintain your competitive agility too, because you need to see what your competitors are doing. So you have to be looking inward and outward. But looking inward is particularly critical. There is the personal look in. What are my boundaries?
Yes. What are my boundaries?
I cross? What are the value sets that I work with that I'm also sharing with my people? What's my level of courage? What do I feel about compassion during these times? Because all of these things will be at play. But leaders are people. They're not MacBooks. They're not PCs. Leaders are people. And in fact, even with the technology, sometimes you have to power it down. So the leaders do have to power down so that they can restore that mental agility and fortitude. They have to take some time for themselves to breathe, to recoup. And Nevada, of course, we love the Kung Fu master, because those of us who were born in the 70s, not me, that know about karate movie and long time karate movie. And when the karate star is going after, that culmination at the end when they're facing that enemy.
The main opponent, that's right.
And you see that entire thing slow down, and you see everything working in the brain. So this is a time when true leaders will rise. But this is a time where leaders will also learn new things about themselves and will build new muscles. And today, Nevada, we are actually joined by two phenomenal leaders who are both in service industries, but in two different types of service industries. And we're so pleased today that they could join us, because one, Stephen Price, is the country manager of Flow Jamaica. And you remember now that just as much as oxygen is important, Wi-Fi is even more important.
Data.
And then on the other hand, food. We have Lisa Lake, who is the group CEO of Restaurants Associates Limited. And both of these leaders will be talking us through their own process through COVID and their decision-making and strategic processes, both for mental agility, their personal processes, as well as business processes, moving out of COVID. So Nevada, thank you. Nevada is going to jump back on a little later, but at this time, we're going to be joined by Stephen Price and Lisa Lake.
Hi, Rochelle. How you doing?
Hello, Stephen. What's up?
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Rochelle. How are you both?
Great. Good. So we're thrilled to have you both on today. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedules. Both of you are in charge of some important industries. And we know that for you to not only be sharing with or wider audience, but also being able to give some advice to our small and medium-sized enterprises, because as much as your organizations are big, a lot of the issues you face are at just different scales. So Lisa, let me start with you, because we're going to start with beauty and brains. In Steve is my friend, we can say that.
Let me look behind me and see where.
So Lisa, tell me now, you are the CEO of Restaurants Associates, and you also were previously CEO of Branson Center. So you've also worked with a lot of small, medium-sized enterprises. So you know a lot of the issues that they would be facing. Yeah. Now, in the restaurant industry in January of 2020, when the economy is booming and we're all sending out all kind of memes, how 2020 is our year, what a fantastic time. People eating up enough Popeye's chicken, and we're eating and we're having a good time.
Right.
When you look at January 2020 as compared to March 2020, can you take us through what that difference in your decision-making process was?
Oh boy, very good question. So first of all, I have to thank Nevada for teaching me a new word, this interregnum word. And it just so happens that I seem to have had a double interregnum, because I actually formally took over this post on January the 1st. So my first 100 days in this job has turned out very differently from what I expected. Absolutely. But, I think that I will be, and the company will be, and Jamaica will be all the stronger for it. So So to your question in terms of what I was seeing as for the year ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that interestingly enough, and this has nothing to do with foresight at all on my side. As I said, being new to the role, what I was focusing on kind of was three main areas. One is kind of navigating the leadership transition, right? Not taking for granted that would be easy, have a new team coming in and working through all of that. Secondly was related to building that team that I see as taking the vision forward with the existing team and some new people coming on board to fill some significant gaps. And one of those gaps being business analytics, where I saw a great need for us to improve that for the future of our business. So quite coincidentally, as I said, nothing to do with any foresight on my side. Those three elements, the navigation of the leadership transition, teamwork, and the business analytics have been three main pillars that I've had to focus on in a very different way than what I had imagined, but
focus on it.
Yeah, conveniently so.
Yeah. So in terms of priorities, and I'm going to just jump to Stephen at this time, because Stephen, you are the country manager and a fantastic country manager who you've been in this role now for what seems like forever. Getting those wheels turning. Yes, you have some cable theft. The customers quarrel with you a lot because you are providing an essential service.
Right.
Now, in January of this year, I noticed that you would have been talking about cable theft, but also talking about how you're going to be rolling out services. How have your priorities as a leader changed from January 2020 to now?
I think January 2020 was just so different, Rochelle. It seems like a whole year ago. But I think for us, we just came off a solid 2019, and we were prepared to swing for the hills, for 2020. We were prepared to do some serious investment in terms of ensuring that we serve the unserved, especially building out into communities that didn't have connectivity. We were looking to launch new customer experience initiatives, which were going to take some serious CapEx investments that we're continuing to do. And at the same time, we were looking towards how we could also build up the intellectual capacity that we had in the organization in terms of the resources, the people resources, to make sure that we had the right team in place in order to take us totally to the next level. So it was all lined up and prepared. And then March 12th happened, right? And it was a whole new world for us, Rochelle. Immediately, we always dreamt and said, okay, boy, I wonder if I could have 700 of my employees working from home. And we did it in one single night, when things changed.
Yes.
So our priorities came down to this, and it's simply this how I put it to it. It's the why I get up every morning, and is what keeps me up at night. And it's ensuring that my people stay employed and my customers stay connected. And those are my main whys for operating now. And it takes you through a whole process of understanding, how do I manage this business in this time? And it's the long-term strategic thinking is just totally out the door.
Because you have to be moving with the now.
You have to move with now. So you're breaking it down into even smaller compartments, week to week, day to day, month to month, just to ensure that you're watching everything and you're creating the kind of performance metrics. I know Lisa spoke about the business intelligence that she needed, but we're using that resource in here just to understand exactly how it's performing, how my cash is going out the door, how my cash is coming in, and because that cash preservation that Nevada spoke about is critical and really, really important at this time, especially for a business like ours.
And I'm so glad.
And if I can,
people, Lisa, let me hear what your point is, because I was actually going to people.
Sorry, I would, before you go to the people, and based on what you were saying earlier, you made a point about the issues facing SMEs and larger companies just at scale. And I wanted to underscore what Stephen just said and what Nevada said previously, which is that whether you're small, medium, or large, cash flow is the name of the game. Then, prior to March 12th, and even more so after March 12th. Yeah. So I just wanted to underscore his point with your earlier question about the relationship between issues facing SMEs and larger corporations.
So, SMEs, sometimes you hear from CEOs of larger organizations, and you guys have back it. You can say anything you want to say. The decision making is actually very similar. It's just that when Lisa makes a decision or Steve makes a decision, it actually does have some national impact too. And if you were to see your business as having smaller levels of national impact, but still having national impact, because we recognize how important our SMEs are to the foundation of our economy. Lisa, I just want to touch on the point of people. Stephen mentioned having to kind of switch the model where people are now working from home, but you are in a business, and I know, Stephen, you have technicians and stuff who cannot work from home.
Yeah, definitely.
But Lisa, you're in a quick service type environment, and yes, you will have a corporate office where persons can work from home. What happens in a situation like that when the country, we get a curfew, there's a work from home order, and the books that we've read, all of those books that are called like the first 100 days, none of them have COVID in there. I actually checked one of them to see where is COVID in there.
I was about to say, if there was one that was sold with that, I definitely should have bought that one.
We're writing that book now.
Yeah. You guys seem to be frozen. Sorry, Rochelle, I'm with you again.
Yes. So Lisa, take us through how when there is a lockdown of the country and you're in a quick service environment where you need people on board.
Yes.
How do you make that decision what to do?
So I think this is I think you're right in starting that question about people, because at the end of the day, it really just comes down to the relationships, right? Because, March 12th and 13th, I think, was a deciding time for us because of the starting first, I think, with the decision for the schools to be closed, because many of our team members are working mothers, and immediately that has an implication. So if you don't have a strong team and strong communication to say, boy, so-and-so can't come to work because she doesn't have any childcare and move and shift, then you're dead in the water. So I think the strength of the strength of your team in terms of the type of communication that you're used to having, and how people their working relationships, and the willingness of people to fill in for one another when you don't have an opportunity to, when your business requires people to be there, is very different. I think that I for one am very excited about this forced work from home situation that we found ourselves in, because I think it has caused for many individuals and companies who thought that this was never going to be possible to find a way to make it work. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we were able to be quite nimble in the responsiveness, especially because of due to the teamwork that we have and the reliance that our team has built upon one another to deal with kind of these dynamic factors. And that's continued throughout. Change in curfew hours, change in locations that are locked down and people physically can't come to work. If you don't have that type of, if you don't have that reliance upon one another and trust in one another and streamlined ways of communicating, it becomes a lot more complicated.
Yeah. Stephen, great that you're joining us back at this time too, because one of the things we've been talking about on this program is pivoting your business. And people say, but you do voice, you do data. What do you do at this time to pivot your business? What have been your pivoting strategies? I've seen some new plans come out, and in terms of the services. But can you share with our viewers some of the things that Flow has done to pivot its business?
I think for us, I'll use pivot in this manner. I think it's pivot operationally for us. I think we've done it a little differently, and I say from this perspective, we've had to really go into, and if you recall the whys that I spoke about in terms of keeping people employed, making sure customers stay connected. In doing that, we've had to look at our entire cost structure, right? We've had to get rid of all of the unnecessary costs, all of those discretionary things that we'd normally like to do. We've had to reprioritize how we spend our marketing dollar, how all of these costs, we've had to really drill it and really just reset the business for the now. We had to understand that this is a time of austerity. We're going to have to make sure that we manage this business quite tightly. But then at the same time, what we said to ourselves is that we have to also come out of this stronger at the other side. And with that, we've also put in a whole plan to look at bold strikes in terms of looking at how that we can actually create new things. I can't really tell a lot of that stuff because obviously
so innovation
lots of innovation continue. And what we've done this through is by creating tiger teams right across the business. So tiger teams looking at various initiatives, cross-functional teams, and we're not making the good the enemy of the perfect. We're moving in a very agile manner, structuring some plans and making sure we come up with ideas. And in these times, you have to lead in a particular manner. You have to lead in what I call the 3 C's. You have to lead with compassion, right? You have to lead using communication and collaboration. And I say compassion from the sense that you have people working at home. And the fact is, you know that these persons have childcare challenges because they're homeschooling. They might be taking care of an elderly parent or so. So you have to be very understanding in these times as to how people operate in this scenario. You have to communicate with your teams every single week, every single day if possible, and check in on them because not many people can do this lockdown thing. Not many people can handle this being alone. They need connection. And the other thing is collaboration. And we use the tools that are available to you in terms of all these Microsoft Teams, Zoom, WhatsApp, whatever the case may be, to make sure that you maintain contact and you create the kind of work environment that you would normally have at the office.
At the office.
Yeah.
So I like what you have presented there, Stephen. And so Stephen Price is country manager of Flow Jamaica, and we're also pleased to have with us Lisa Lake, who is Group CEO of Restaurant Associates Limited. Stephen just talked to us about the type of leadership that is necessary: leadership with compassion, communication, collaboration. Now, Stephen runs essential service. Lisa also technically runs us in an essential service, but unlike the product that is coming out of telecoms, where whether or not there's a curfew, you still are going to be able to access your services. Lisa, when there is a curfew, the curfew times are changing. So your bottom line is affected with the product that you sell. And you are looking at your workforce. There are questions of layoff, of redundancy. Tell me about, because you made a very interesting announcement that I want you to talk about, and the decision making that came to you seeking to keep as many of your people employed as possible. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, since the end of March, as we started to go through our scenarios, one of the things that we decided as a team, that as long as possible, we would try to keep the team together to be ready and poised to come out outside of this. It's very to compare ourselves to other markets where there is far greater support available for people who are even temporarily laid off. We don't have that. We don't have that available to us, and as a result of, and I think we need to be conscious of that and all of the implications that comes come from that. Certainly not all businesses in our position to do that, but it took us a number of weeks doing exactly what Stephen was saying in terms of looking at every single cost and line by line, employee by employee, trying to find a plan that could work for the group as a whole. And thankfully, through the hard work of the team, we were able to come up with one that has brought us through up until now, whereby every team member is guaranteed a minimum number of hours, and that despite the fact that they may be working in an area that is on the lockdown or curfew, etc., to allow a confirmed wage to them. And we've been able to afford that by making cost cuts across the way, but also through the senior team being willing to make a contribution, whereby the highest paid team members are taking the largest percentage pay cut in order for us to afford this plan for as long as we can.
So this is really a pulling together of the team and a very deliberate action. We are going to keep our people, as many of our people as we can, and this is what we're going to do it.
Yes.
And so we've been talking about this operational pivot. One of the things, just switch a little bit, in terms of your industries. So this is a 2-point question. In terms of your industries, what are some of the key things that you've learned since March that you never realized before because we didn't have COVID? And after that, we're actually going to talk a little bit about how you have learned different things about how you lead and yourselves during this time, because this really is a time that leaders do a lot of self-reflection, and the grit that you have or don't have, this is when you realize it. So Lisa, let's start with you now. In terms of what you've learned about your industry, what have you learned differently about your industry during this time?
So as I mentioned, I was in a position where I was learning a lot from the start. So I've had to go far more granular, and to bring up the point again about the business analytics and even your points about the curfew, understanding the pattern of our sales and what being closed from 3 o'clock in the afternoon does to the business, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, 9 o'clock in the afternoon, and running our scenarios based off of, okay, well, how many hours do we have to work? How are we going to get the team home safely? A lot of operational. As Nevada was saying earlier, you know, you still have your eye on the long-term plans and that picture, that plan that you had on paper on January 1st, but it becomes far more important what is happening this week, today, for the next 3 hours, and when's the Prime Minister's next announcement, and what do we suspect that will, what news that will bring, and what effects that will have.
So Stephen, in your industry, Lisa, you know, every time I recall when you would have started in January, and the good thing for you is that you can write the book about what a real 100 days looks like.
I will write the book. Okay.
Stephen, you had your 100 days a couple years ago.
Yeah.
You've been moving at a clip. I see Soho, Jamaica asking something about the Flow Network. You're pretty used to the questions, and we'll just touch on that a little later because your customers are here too and you can't forget them.
Sure, definitely.
You recognize you had a list of what your key things are, your key performance indicators, where the issues were. And then content is king was the buzzword, and data is the way of the future.
Yes, it is.
What new things have you learned about what data being the future actually means?
I think it's reaffirmed. No, I mean, I don't think it's a new learning, but it's more reaffirmed, and our entire team knows that now more than ever. So it really has given us the result. But what I have really learned is how much you can lean on your people in this time. And if you're honest, your authentic self, and you keep them informed every step of the way, and they understand the why you're doing some things, they will always be on board. And I'm happy to say, just throughout this tough journey, my team have remained with me, and they have remained to the task and are delivering on a day-to-day basis on trying circumstances.
So in terms of your customers, your customers, because in this time, for those of us who are not on the front line, and the front line are health workers, the front line are our supermarket workers, the front lines are our technicians, the front lines are the persons in our quick service restaurants. So when I leave my house and I run down to Popeyes and I am like, look at the time, I know that it is soon time for the curfew to come in, but me need a 2-piece combo. Now, Lisa, when you are trying to motivate and keep your team engaged, when they too are exposed, they have to jump on public transportation to go home. How do you keep that level of customer service and keep your people still pumped up to deliver?
Oh, I think that's an excellent question. For us, it's come in a couple of forms. One is that we as a company believe strongly in the value of the company playing a part in the community. So that means that our team, as you said, our team is serving the front line. They're a frontline worker-ish, serving frontline workers. So there's a sense of pride that they have in their job. We've been very lucky to have the opportunity to make donations of 24,000 meals to PATH recipients, as well as almost 30,000 to frontline workers from the constabulary force, as well as the Ministry of Health. And the team sees a great deal of pride in knowing the role that they're playing in helping to support frontline workers through these types of donations. But also, as you said, like yourself, people who are very busy, have a lot going on in their lives, are afraid of going outside, literally, that there is a level of trust that our customers are placing in us, that we will deliver to them in the highest quality and within a reasonable time, so that you can go back to your family and spend time where it really counts. So I think that is, for our team, that is the motivation that we all need to keep going. And like Stephen mentioned, been lucky enough to lead a team that takes great pride from that and is motivated by that.
Yeah. And it's amazing that these two leaders are talking so much about their people, because it's people serving people, and a recognition from where they sit that these same people have families, they have fares too, and it's a lot to keep them motivated. And when I call Stephen Price to tell him that my internet is down and we are in the middle of a curfew, Stephen, what as a leader in such an important service industry, knowing that you have to have technicians out on the road leaving their families, but knowing that people are working from home, so when there's an outage, something's got to give. How do you manage that for your customers and for your people?
I think firstly and foremost, you have to be in the trenches with your people, especially in times of dire straits. For me, I've balanced trying to work from home, but I've pretty much been in the office every single day since this thing went down. I go into office particularly because I want my people to see me out there in the trenches with them, so that people know exactly what's happening, on a day-to-day basis, so that they know that we're with them, they know that we care, they know that we're in their corner. Yes, they're serving the front line. Yes, they're on the front line serving customers. Yes, they're in homes where they are vulnerable, but we're making sure we keep them protected. PPE, all of the things that we need, sanitizer, all the sanitization exercises that we carry out in stores, the social distancing kind of mechanisms that we place. But at the same time as well, we also recognize that even the spouses of or employees may have lost jobs, and that's a key thing for us. So recently we launched a fund to assist our employees, those who are in some difficult, dire straits. We've been able to put some money aside to assist them and their families to go through this period, because we know it's not easy. We definitely know it's not easy.
So as leaders in this time, where you have to be watching the bottom line on a minutely basis.
Certainly. So
there is no sitting down in the boardroom anymore and saying in 3 months we're going to do this, 6 months, because you don't know from day to day what's happening. And truth be told, that's not necessarily how we were trained to operate as leaders. And that has not had to be our reference point. Worst case, we have a hurricane or there is some other natural disaster. But when you talk about a COVID, because hurricane, you know, they say with the hurricane, at least you know that in a couple of days, Burger King will open back and will open and run its usual times. Yeah. But what is the contingency planning like? What is the planning process like as a leader during this time?
I think you have to be quite agile, and I say it comes down to how you monitor your business, and you have to monitor it on a day-to-day basis and make those tweaks, make those adjustments as you go along. You know, you look out at where you want to be. At least you look a little further out to say, okay, I want to be at this point. But the fact is, you're going to have to make some key decisions now in order to achieve those goals. And I think that's what we focused on, especially in the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks, we went through a whole scenario planning exercise where we looked at the worst case scenarios and multiple scenarios and planned for those kind of events happening. And even in the midst of that, right now, I mean, like I'd say for business continuity, you have to always be at the ready. We had, like on Friday, we had a multi-hazard hurricane planning session whereby we had COVID scenarios in there, we had hurricane, we had so many twists in there. But
the hurricanes don't realize they have COVID.
No, they don't realize we have COVID, so you have to also be ready for that. That's good one, just remember that. You know, so you have to always be prepared and make sure that you have the planning mechanisms and the teams put together in order to do these things. But monitoring, Rochelle, I can't overemphasize that. You have to know the metrics of the business. You have to know the key ones that drive your cash. You have to know the key ones that drive the collections. We know our customers out there are going through a tough time because you say 35% of our GDP is hospitality. So you know that all of those hotels, all of those villas, etc., are our customers. All of the employees there are our customers as well. And you know that, for instance, when people don't have cash, they prioritize things that they're going to pay for, right? And we have to understand sometimes that we fall a little lower down the pecking order than most other things, food necessarily, power, water. You know, so we try as best as possible to understand and work with our customers. But if I don't get the cash coming in, I can't keep my employees. So it's that balancing act that you have of compassion for your customers at the same time, but at the same time, you know that you have a business to run.
Yeah. And I see Lisa nodding. Lisa, what has your experience in this planning time? Because you would have come in January to kind of feel out the business, get things going, get your footing, and pretty much you were just thrust into COVID. What has it been like for you, this planning process?
So, I think being open to flexibly just literally throwing the plan out the window, despite how much emphasis and effort had been put on it. That's a hard pill to swallow, but it is the reality. And then secondly, in terms of what's the shape of the new plan? Again, we've spoken a lot about data, but also the knowledge from your team that is on the ground, right? Because the data will tell you a large part of the story, but there's intricacies that your team will know on the ground that adds further context that is important for your decision making. So I'm a strong believer in starting with the data, but leaving room for anecdotal evidence to help inform the way that we look at the data. So I would say that our plans, we've become comfortable with the fact that we are only planning right now in 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, 180-day sprints, and I'm comfortable with the fact that the team is not looking for me for the crystal ball for the answer, and nor am I looking to them. I believe really strongly in hiring people that are smarter than you. But I also believe that at a time like this, it's not it's not the smartest person in the room or a collection of the smartest people in the room that make the difference. It's a team that's willing to work together and stay together to get through it. So I think the combination of the subject matter expertise, the commitment, and the collaboration is what really helps to inform the plan and have a level of comfort when, okay, well, none of the assumptions that we looked at turned out to be true. So let's go back and start over again. And it's no fault of anybody's.
Yeah. And there's a certain level of humility and vulnerability as a leader, because as you go through, some of the decisions are not going to be the best decisions. Some of them are great decisions, but you have to be willing to just admit where we are. So viewers, we are today.
You have to be vulnerable, as they say, Rochelle. Yes. I mean, you it's okay to make mistakes. You know, if an employee makes a mistake in the best interest of my customers, I have no problems. You know, you must be trying something. So I mean, you have to be vulnerable to understand that there are going to be mistakes, but you can recover from those mistakes.
Yes. So we're going to be joined shortly again by Nevada, and we want to get your views on the recovery of the economy. But before we go there, so viewers, if you're just joining us, we're talking about leading your company through uncertain times. We're joined by Lisa Lake, Group CEO of Restaurant Associates Limited, and Stephen Price, Country Manager of Flow Jamaica. Now, at the top end of the show, we talked about this concept of the interregnum. This period in between the old way that we know has gone away and the new way that has not yet properly formed. Now, we have never had to truly deal with these kinds of things as an entire nation. Different companies will have to deal with it at different times, but not as an entire nation. In fact, not as an entire world. Now, in this time, for both of you, the question I ask is, for our viewers watching and asking themselves, what are the key leadership characteristics that you think are important in this time of uncertainty, in this interregnum?
Okay, I can go first. I think one of the first key ones is discipline. You have to be able to do the same things day in, day out, religiously, in terms of making sure that you do the right things in terms of your business. Jim Collins has a book, Great by Choice, where he speaks about 20-mile marching, right? It's about making sure you wake up every single day and you do that 20-mile march in times of sun, in times of rain, in times of snow, in times of sleet, because those are the things that will keep your business going and humming and going in the right direction. For me, the other key thing is honesty in this time. You have to be very honest with your customer. You have to be very honest with your people, right? You have to make sure that people understand exactly where you're going, whatever problems they're having, whatever issues. But you also have to treat this all with humility and pride. You know, pride in your product, pride in your service, pride in the things that you're doing and what you mean in people's lives. And that's humility from the perspective that, yes, we know it's an awesome responsibility that we have, and we're not going to take it for granted.
So, Stephen, you talked about discipline, about honesty, about humility. Some very basic concepts that are key characteristics of leadership, and especially at this time. Lisa, what characteristics do you think leaders need to have at this time that will cause them to be able to emerge on the other side of COVID?
So I'm going to save the values one and for my last one. But I think, firstly, a comfort in communication and visibility, both to your team and your customers, are important. And then
time.
I beg your pardon?
The time that you can hide.
No, absolutely not. You have to be out front, and both for your team and for the customers. For the next point, which is that I think, again, to my earlier point, people may not be necessarily looking for you for the answers and that crystal ball, but they're looking for you to help identify to them what the end goal is and help them prioritize through that process and take away the bureaucracy that is getting in the way, and help them focus on what should be focused on and why it should be focused on. And then I think to Stephen's point, being really clear on your values, the values of the company, your personal values, and of course, ideally, the two of them are aligned. For me, I gave a presentation the other day and I showed this, I'll show it again. I wear a bracelet that helps me to remember mine. It's on right here. And it says, be true, be you, be kind. And I think for me, that if every time I find myself at that kind of crossroads, I physically have it on my body, look down on it, and it usually hasn't got me wrong yet as far as the values are concerned. I may make some bad analytical decisions, which has happened many, many times, but at least I have comfort in knowing that I was truthful in doing it, I was kind in doing it, and I was myself.
The only other thing, Rochelle, I'd add to that is agility. I think in this time, especially, you have to be agile. And I say it too, like we had about 200 door-to-door salespersons on the streets. Obviously, because the vulnerability that they would be in, out in the street selling and that stuff. We changed their roles. They came inside, they became call center agents. They became collections agents. They were working on other projects that the business just hadn't had the time to get around to in the past and needed resources to do that. So agility is quite key in this in terms of how you lead and how you redeploy staff and do all these things,
And that's even a part of the pivot. It's amazing because we've been talking to our SMEs over the last several weeks, and it's almost like a culmination now too in terms of the leadership values and some of the considerations that you have to be making as a leader of a business. How do you pivot your operations? How do you put your people back to work on what is important and essential at the time? But then you as a leader, are you willing to be out front and to put yourself in the firing line and to be the one making the statement, to be the one on the talk shows answering the questions? And Lisa, as a leader, be true, be you, be kind. As basic as that is, it's so fundamental to what happens with your business. I'm going to ask Nevada to join us now because we're going to be talking. And viewers, please send in your questions. I'm seeing one here from Christopher Durrell. How can you present empathetic openly as a leader while keeping your analytical business decisions as a priority? And I think that's a good question to segue, because this is about those hardcore decisions and making those decisions and still maintaining your vulnerability. And how are you vulnerable in this time as a leader? Lisa, let me start with you.
Sure. So how to be empathetic when the numbers aren't giving a good story? Is that the kind of question? Is that the question? I think
yes. And actually be vulnerable in that state.
Yeah, I think this is a time when everybody is feeling scared, and there's a high level of fear, there's a high level of uncertainty, and there's no shame in that. And I think it is, for me, I see it as a great opportunity for leaders who have, for whatever reason beforehand, felt that it was inappropriate for them to be vulnerable, to kind of lose some of that guard. So to answer the question more specifically, I think if you're looking at the numbers and they're not telling a good story, you owe it to your team to be, and Stephen made the point earlier, to be open and upfront and honest about it. And I think if people trust that you're coming from a place of honesty and transparency, there is and vulnerability, there's a lot more compassion all around, and understanding that despite the fact that decisions might be difficult, they are necessary and they're done with respect and compassion.
So Stephen, for you, is this something that only female leaders can do, or is it something that's expected of male leaders?
No, I don't think gender has anything to do with it at all. It's just the fact that you have to be vulnerable. You have to know that, for instance, in a business from whatever size, you may not have all the answers. You understand me? Lisa spoke about hiring people smarter than her, right? That's a very good way to supplement your knowledge and your direction and your strategy. I think for me, it's about inviting people into my story. you create a story in terms of what exactly you want to achieve, right? You invite people into the vulnerabilities of the story in terms of just the truth, the raw truth. This is what it is. We need to do this and we need to move in this particular direction. In order for us to get there, these are the tough decisions that we have to take at this time. It's not something that we want to do. And when people know that you're making those decisions and you have come to that as a last resort, they understand. When they see the other things that you cut in terms of some of your other marketing expenses, maybe sponsorships, those things that they would normally have complained about, or why we're spending so much money here and there, and you've gone into those itty-bitty costs, stationery, all of these things that that we have wastage in organization around. When they see you've gone down to the bone, and you say, well, I'm going to have to ask you to share in a salary cut. You have to tell them the why. They understand the why. They are invited into that story, and they understand that this is the only thing that you could have done at this present point in time. You know, and they will understand. They will buy. They will buy into the story. They will buy into the vision.
Thank you both. I see Nevada nodding. I see an interesting question here from Janice Allen about how do you decompress, and how do you release the stress. But before we do that, I'm going to add some stress to you, because we're going to go back now to the J curve, the V curve, the U curve. Nevada, I think we had a poll.
Yes, and we have the results. We have the results of the poll, interestingly. And the question was first, how do you see the shape of the recovery? 50% of the people said U, 12% of the people said V, 38% of the people said L, which is pretty scary, and J, that rapid go up, nobody think that's happening. But this is for Jamaica. Mm-hmm. Interesting. How do you guys see it from where you're sitting? And again, it's the U, the V, the L, or the J. How you see the recovery?
From my perspective, I think it's going to be a long U. A very long U.
I'm with Stephen. I'm hoping for the long U.
I think you've hit the nail on the head earlier, Nevada. The industries that we have in this country in terms of the service industry, hospitality, etc. Planes won't fly as we hope they would. We know we're not going to see as many passengers. We hope, we're optimistic, but it is with risk, you know, to open up the economy at this time. I mean, we have to be very smart about what we're doing, or we'll see another wave. You know, so we have to be really guarded. We have, even though we understand the situation that, you know, this austerity, people can't take it no more. But we have to make sure that, for instance, we make the right decisions. I really see a long U, with a probably starting to rise somewhere in about December, January.
Yes, and Steve, also to put you on the spot, because your industry is likely to be very critical for us, because anything that we're pivoting to technology-wise, the backbone of that is going to be what Flow is helping us to do. So you will be hopefully part of any industrial pivot that we're making as Jamaicans. We had another poll that said, do you have a contingency plan for yourself or your business if the recovery is slower than we hope? Yes, 33%. No, 25%. Sort of, 42%. That's the kind of like, I'm not really sure. I'm thinking it's kind of nothing wrong with that. It's also the flexibility and the hope, right? The other one we had was, do you have a capable team that just gets stuff done? 43% said yes, 0% said no, 57% said sometimes. How do you guys deal with team accountability? How do you get somebody to finish things that they have started? What do you guys do in terms of that kind of management?
And Lisa, let's start with you for this question.
So I think it is easier, and I'd like to tie that into the whole discussion with the work from home from before. I think if you have clarity on the KPIs for the business, the KPIs for each role, it becomes a much easier conversation, right? I think that's an area that I know that my company can improve on. And in times like this, when it is, as with every recession, when you're seeing kind of the cracks in me as a leader, in the company as a whole, that's one crack that I would like to fill. But to answer your question in terms of the how do we get everybody to high performing? I think if you set the expectation that this is a high performing team and this is what we expect from you as a high performer, this is what I think the best description I heard recently of culture is what gets praised and what gets punished. So if you think about the culture that you want to set in your organization as a high performance culture, what do you allow and what do you say, you know what, it's not ready for prime time? And having a open and transparent and frank conversation, but a kind one to say, because there's clarity in what the expectations are. I think you have to start from a point of clarity on what the expectations are and support and recognize that as a leader, you're here to support an individual get to those hit those targets and why those targets are what they are, and be able to identify, okay, well, what's not going according to plan that's causing us to be off target, and how can we adjust it, or how can I support to get you there, to get the company there.
Yeah. And Stephen, I see you nodding also.
No, I mean, it's quite clear. I mean, you have to make sure that you keep your employees and your teams. You have to make sure everybody's accountable for the activities that they're supposed to do. As Lisa said, you have to make sure they understand, have buy-in to the KPIs that have been set. For me, these KPIs have to be very visible, in terms of everybody understands what everybody on the team is supposed to be doing. And if they're not doing that, you have to hold them to account, right? And you have to call them out on it. And not because it's times of COVID doesn't mean that somebody may not be replaced in this time. Because right now is also a good time for really assessing your teams that you have in your organizations to understand, do I have the best people that are there? Is there somebody else out there better who can achieve more in this time and can respond to difficult times such as this? So it's a process that you have to go through. But in these times, it's more critical than ever that you hold the performance management really, really, really tightly, so that people understand you're not micromanaging anybody, but you're saying to them, this is what we agreed. We expected it by this date, and I've not gotten it by this date. What's the challenge? How do you manage up? How do you manage downwards as well, in terms of how we execute on a day-to-day basis?
So actually, yeah. Stephen, that leads us to a good point with respect to flow now. And we're giving you the opportunity to sort of, the number of questions have come in about the flow performance and the flow network. What's happening, simple layman's language for us to understand, and what is flow doing to rectify that situation? And when can we be in a situation where people are like happy, very happy with the performance? So just give us some context and we'll let you sort of explain. Sure, what's going on? Thanks.
Firstly, I mean, obviously there are customers online, and I'd like to apologize to them for the outage that we had 2 days ago. Was one of those challenges that are perfect storms that you never expect to happen, in terms of one of your systems going down. And we got it up back operational, and we're in good stead, and we're making sure that we make the investigation into all that had happened, just to make sure that it doesn't happen again. The fact is, it's unprecedented times, Nevada. We are seeing 40% increase in traffic, subsea and fixed traffic, over our highest peak ever last year, if you understand. And this is where we were supposed to be maybe in 2021. So it's been this global digital trading course has really increased the demand for data. We have continued to respond on a day-to-day basis and have been moving to really stabilize the network. We are even putting additional bandwidth off subsea. We're putting in even more in June, about 100 gigs will be put in, just to make sure that everybody is okay.
So let me ask you this, just following up on that now, since work at home looks like it's going to be with us for a while, given your capacity now, Where do you, how much capacity and when do you have enough capacity that can absorb this increase in the data traffic with the learning at home and the work at home that we never necessarily planned for so early in the year? How are your plans to increase the capacity going?
I think we have been increasing with every increase that demand has driven. In the first week, it had gone up by 20%. We responded to ensure that, but it's continuing to climb and climb and climb, and we have to continue to grow with the traffic. I can't say, for instance, that I'm going to build a network of 3 times the size for a peak that you don't know that you will meet. So we have to continuously grow with the customers, because it's the customers that direct us as to the direction based on their usage. What I will say to you is that globally, this is not a problem for Jamaica alone, right? Global networks are a problem. When you see that European networks had to ask Netflix and YouTube to turn down the quality of their video service because it would crash people's networks. You have to understand that we are not immune. Netflix,
yes, of course.
Amazon Prime, all these things have blown up in Jamaica at the same time as online homeschooling. And in all of this, the key thing that has been there is the data video. The things that we're doing right now have become commonplace, things that were normally done by conference calls in the past. So there's a high demand on data traffic. But what I would say to you is that the team is focused like a laser on this in terms of ensuring that we create the network that our customers can be proud to be on, that we can be proud of as well. Yes, we're going through a few challenges right now, but we are creating the kind of strategy that we started on last year in terms of making sure that this network is number one. We continue to build out new homes, Nevada. I mean, we've built out almost 20,000 new homes by fiber this year already. We've added multiple sites. We've increased spectrum capacity so that the broadband is there. And right now, our coverage is over 96% population for LTE. So it's in every nook and cranny for population for customers to be able to connect in some shape or form.
Sure. Right. So in here, we'll have to stop watch the Netflix so that the people them can learn.
Nevada.
I have to slow down. Now the capacity. All right, we have another question. Sure. Where should we pivot Jamaica's economy of tourism and remittance if tourism and remittances don't come back quickly? 50% said agriculture, 21% said cannabis, because plenty of people stress out there. 29% said technology, and 0% said more BPO. So we're not looking for more BPO. Agriculture at 50%, cannabis 21%, technology-related industries at 29%. How you guys see it? Where should we be pivoting? Lisa.
Well, the BPO one is a hard one for me to agree to, but I would agree on the restaurant associate side. I would agree on the agriculture. I think the importance of supply chain at a time like this has come to light and or been really stress tested, and I think it is increasingly important for all companies and the country as a whole to diversify and back through the value chain as much as possible and be in control in as much of our supply chain as we can be.
I tend to agree with Lisa, but at the same time, I do believe technology has a significant part for us. In everything that we've seen so far since COVID, there are a couple of problems that we do see as citizens. There's friction everywhere in terms of how to get market goods to customers, how to get things. And we have to really have some key focus on logistics in terms of getting products to consumers. On the fintech side, I think we need to digitize cash as much as possible. If we don't do that, we won't have an e-industry as such. So that's something key in terms of mobile wallets and mobile money. But logistics is going to be a key thing for this market, as we expect people to really move away from brick and mortar for some products and services. But at the same time, we have to find a way, how do we marry the customer, the supplier, bring them closer together, we have to make sure it digitize cash.
100%.
Understood. One last poll now. We ask people sort of how you're feeling personally. Tired and nervous was 7%. Energized and ready to go was 14%. And honestly, it depends on the day, 79%. So I think people feel that kind of whipsaw situation, which we all sounds familiar, which we all kind of recognize. Any last words you have for our SMEs before you guys go? That would be last words of advice, thoughts, concerns in the context.
Stephen, you want to go first or you want me?
You can go first.
All right. I would say that back to where we started, don't feel that your problems are unique and that your problems are not being felt by others along the scaled businesses. And more than ever, reach out to your mentors, your board of advisors that you can look to for support and advice to kind of help through the times. And I think as a last point and tying into what you said about kind of how you're feeling and the stress, I personally, I think that you mentioned there was a question earlier, Rochelle, about how to deal with the stress. And I personally feel more than ever, I've never been happier to be living in Jamaica at a time like this, in terms of physically. I mean, to think that, I could be having to deal with this in a major metropolitan city in a small square foot place, and instead I'm able to walk outside and get vitamin D and take a nice deep breath to calm my fight or flight. That feeling that has been going on since March the 13th. I think we all have to find the things in our life that we feel very grateful for, and seek out those that can help support us through it.
Yeah. Stephen.
No, I think Lisa said quite a bit, but what I'm going to challenge our SMEs to do is embrace the disruption. The reality is you have an opportunity right now in this interregnum to understand where is the friction with your customer. Who is solving your customer's problem for you? You have an opportunity to pivot in these times to ensure that you fix those problems and those issues that bring you closer to the consumer on a day-to-day basis, because you want to ensure that you control that relationship. You don't want to hand over that relationship to someone else. You want to make sure that you keep that relationship and keep that bond. The last part in short, I mean, John Maxwell has a saying, the pessimist complains about the wind, right? The optimist expects it to change. The leader adjusts the sails. We have to just adjust the sails and move forward in this time. It's tough, but let's make sure that we put the ship in the right direction, and we take the learnings. You're writing a new book on COVID.
We are writing the book. Lisa is already penning what the first 100 days really is. We can't thank you enough, both of you, for taking the time to share with us today, to share with our viewers, leading your company through uncertain times. You guys have really dropped a lot of gems. And for our viewers who joined us late, the recording of this will be on our Facebook page. So I would urge you to go back and look at it. Lisa, you said be true, be you, be kind. Because as leaders, and as Stephen also emphasized, that we have to have honesty, we have to have compassion and collaboration. We have to be agile during this time. We have to know our people. We have to be willing to share with our people and to be honest with our people and with our customers. We have to be willing to go to the front of the line and present ourselves. This is the type of leadership time that we are in. So this interregnum that we're talking about, whether it's a large company or a small company, we're all feeling the pressure. But the leaders, the true leaders will, as Stephen put it, will adjust the sails. And we love that quote from John Maxwell. We'll also post that quote. We have to adjust those sails. Lisa also dropped another gem. Culture is what you praise and what you punish. So now your true culture, the true culture of your business will come out. So we want to thank you both again for joining us. We want to thank our viewers for staying with us, and please go back and review this recording, because this has been a phenomenal opportunity to speak to two of our significant leaders in Jamaica. Stephen, thank you for your honesty with the internet, because sometimes we cuss you. Lisa, You've had to do a lot of operational pivots with your business, and we wish you continued success in your next 100 days and beyond. So, Nevada, thank you again for being with us this week. And viewers, please sign up for our weekly memo at sme@psoj.org. We are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Jamaica time, and we invite you to look back at the previous recordings, send in your questions, share the videos, be a part of the conversation. We will emerge on this other side of COVID stronger. Let's put these business lessons into practice. Thank you again for joining us, and see you next week for another episode of COVID Cast JA.